Hello, everyone. I'm Joseph, and today we're going to be looking at the political compass quiz. As a devout Catholic that takes all of his political considerations as to what the church teaches, especially when it's infallible, and of course what Scripture teaches, I'm just looking at this from a lens of a Catholic. So, and once again, I obviously am not speaking on behalf of the Catholic Church. This is just, to some degree, it's opinion, but it's just me trying to follow the church as best I could and follow what I believe that Jesus would want, coming from a Catholic viewpoint. Okay, page 1 of 6. This is how we see the country and the world. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. I definite statement. However, I also acknowledge that there has to be transnational corporations in order for there to be economic globalization. It should obviously serve the people, but I feel like by clicking that, you're beginning to go down a dark road. So let's just click agree. I'd always support my country whether it was right or wrong. Strongly disagree. My country's right. I will not support it. Jesus told us to stand up against those that oppress us, against those that um, oppress God, essentially. No one chooses their country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. Um, I think you can be proud of your country if if it's being very godly, if it's serving God. Um, so I disagree with that. I wouldn't strongly disagree though. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. Strongly disagree, of course. That's obvious. It's not even scientifically. Yeah. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Disagree. There's many people that are opposed to what's something I'd be opposed to. I would be opposed to just something random, I guess. I would be opposed to communism. There are many evil. Hitler was opposed to communism. So does that mean that because Hitler was opposed to Stalin, that Hitler is now my friend? No, it doesn't mean that. That doesn't mean that at all. So strongly disagree. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Yes, it is sometimes justified. However, we should try to comply with that as much as we can, so I would not put strongly agree. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. Absolutely. People spend too much time online. I ironically say that. We're even starting to see our brains aren't as intelligent because we aren't having to think through things. We can just go to a phone and just look it up. Just because we have access to all the answers in the world doesn't make us any smarter. Especially the entertainment. We are becoming so incredibly like people can't even sit in silence anymore. People are zombies of their phones, and that's coming from someone that's in high school that does not have a phone, by the way. People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. It looks like we're into economics. Oh, I don't know what to put there. People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. I suppose that that's true. I wouldn't say strongly react. I guess that's wouldn't that be more of a? I guess it is kind of a subjective fact, but I take it that's kind of objective to some degree. Okay, controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. Hmm. Once again, this is something I'm not really sure on. I'd say disagree, but honestly, I honestly don't really know on that one. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. Absolutely. They absolutely need regulation. The Catholic Church teaches that we need to be concerned about our world because it is finite, it is not infinite. From each according to his ability and to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. Yes, I think it is a fundamental idea. However, I think that the people that apply this oftentimes are making excuses for not so good things. Um, but essentially, yes, agree. The freer the market, the freer the people. Um, I disagree. Now, I'm not a communist or anything, but you have to acknowledge that the more free of a market you're going to have, the more corruption and more people are going to have taking advantage of it. The Catholic Church speaks against a economy that kills and produces greed, but definitely not strongly disagree, because both extremes are awful. It's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled brand and consumer product. Um, I'd say that it is pretty sad. I don't think it's as deep as this wants us to be, though. I wouldn't say strongly agree. I would say agree, though. Um, it is kind of sad that I don't know if it's sad necessarily that specifically. Um, but I think the point that it's getting at is that everything is so consumerized, and that is very sad. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Strongly disagree. Land shouldn't be a commodity. Of course it should be a commodity. We should be able to buy and sell it. I mean, clearly that's in scripture. I mean, I'm not sure if it specifically says land should be a commodity, but we see that that's how it is done in scriptures, and the Catholic Church is opposed to communism. It is regrettable, and yeah, it is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. Absolutely. Absolutely. Strongly agree. That's greed. That is sloth, potentially. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. Um, I'm not sure what protectionism is. Let me just look that up real quick. Protectionism. Government policies that restrict international trade, often through tariffs. Yeah, I'd say that that's okay sometimes. Yeah, I wouldn't say strongly, but it's definitely necessary in trade. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. Disagree. Strongly disagree. They need to represent socially. They need to represent what the church wants it to. And when I say that, I don't mean. Just let me rephrase that. They should represent what God's what God wants them to. They should represent an honest company. They should represent a hardworking company. They should represent a company that supports the church, that supports the Bible, that supports God. Okay. The rich are too highly taxed. Disagree. I'm tempted to put strongly disagree, if you want the honest truth. And the reason why I say this is because um, if you look at how much the middleman is paying right now, middle class American, in terms of percent, it is crazy. I know people that own businesses that will not take advantage of the system or get themselves into things that significantly reduce their taxing, even though it's not illegal, programs or whatever. I know people that don't do that because they feel like it's cheating, and they're paying about 30% of their um, yearly income in taxes. 30%. That's a lot. If you look up how much most billionaires pay, it's like 2% on average, about. The rich are too highly taxed. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. Disagree. I think that medical care is a fundamentally thing that should be accessible to everybody. However, we don't want it to become so socialistic that we have like a 3 month waiting list like we've seen in some European countries and Australia. I'm not sure if they still have that issue now though. Um, but of course, there shouldn't be a higher standard of medical care. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. I guess I wouldn't put strongly Greek because I could also see this saying like if you can pay money, then obviously you're going to get better treatment. So I'm just going to keep it there. Government should penalize businesses that mislead the public. Absolutely. Lying is wrong. Period. Lying is a sin. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies. I would agree with that. That is stopping fraud, that is stopping greed, that is stopping sin. Amen. Page 3 of 6. Abortion. You already know what I'm going to put. When the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. I agree. I agree. when the woman's life is not threatened, it should always be illegal. Period. There's literally no argument. All authority should be questioned. Now, governmentally, yes. Religiously, no. Obviously, we have the Pope, we have bishops, we have priests. Obviously, we should take into consideration if it's valid, but if it is valid, then it shouldn't be questioned. Of course, we have, but then again, this is referring to political reasons. This isn't religious necessarily. Um, so I'm going to put agree. I think that all authority should be questioned. However, Jesus does submit that we say that we need to submit to our authority as long as they're not going against what the church teaches. But I don't think that there's ever been a government in the history of mankind that has ever been perfect in terms of not doing that. So, of course, some level of questioning is necessary, but I feel like people overdo it a lot. Perhaps not now. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Strongly disagree. That is not Christian values. Jesus spoke against that directly. We need to turn the other cheek. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. Um, I think that education is important. I'm going to disagree with that. I don't strongly disagree. I can see myself going agree too. Like this isn't super relevant to me, but I'm just going to put agree because I think that education is good. That's what the church. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. Schools should not. I agree. Attendance should not be whether or not you want to or not. Attendance should be required. Period. You go to school. Schools should not make attendance compulsory. Oh wait, what? Wait, I don't like how this is worded. Am I doing it the wrong way? Schools should not make, so they're not making it compulsory. I would, yeah. Therefore, I agree. Schools should not make, yeah. Uh, Wait, but is that referring to like the public school? Like, is that saying that you have to go to public school? I'm just gonna put agree. I don't know. All people have their rights, but it is better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind. Uh, I mean, obviously, it's not good if you have someone that's viciously hates another person mixing with another person, because that's probably just going to cause not so good things to happen. So, I'm going to say disagree, but not strongly disagree. Um, Good parents sometimes have to spank their children, absolutely. Ever since we started to do that, people have been much less rebellious. Perhaps this is more from the effects of industrial technologies, though. Who knows? It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. Mm, I'm just going to put strongly disagree. I think that keeping away secrets is a form of lying. That's, of course, wrong. Of course, like, if it's like a life or death situation, that's taken into consideration. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. Strongly disagree. Marijuana is a drug. Drugs are. The Catholic Church is strongly opposed to drugs. Um, yeah, for personal use. I mean, there are perhaps in rare circumstances medical use is acceptable, but for personal use, not being it possessing marijuana for political use should not be a critical offense. I strongly disagree with that. The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generations to find jobs. Um, the prime function, yes, but I don't think that should be the only function. I'd say agree, but not strongly agree. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. I disagree. I believe that that's up to their discernment, and I believe that if it's what God wants for them to have to potentially pass these generations, these disabilities on to their kids, I think that might be done. I mean, we aren't, as Catholics, as Christians, we are not strongly opposed to suffering. Suffering is a ticket to our sanctification. It can be. I strongly disagree with that. The most important thing for children to learn to accept discipline. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. I mean, obviously, the most important would be to accept the church, but in terms from a solely social perspective, not a religious perspective, I would, I'd say I'd actually discipline and kindness, like agree. I wouldn't say strongly agree though. There's definitely more important things. There are no savage and civilized peoples. There are only different cultures. We can take this two ways. We can take this from the race perspective, or we can take this from the perspective of there are civilizations that are For example, I would not say that a civilized atheist society is any better than a pagan Stone Age, still stuck in the Paleolithic period in terms of advancements. I wouldn't say that that's the really only different cultures. In my opinion, they're both savage. The only, in terms of civilized, you know what? I'm just going to say disagree. Because the way that this is construed is not from a religious perspective. You know what? Strongly disagree. Because this is basically asking if you think, yeah. Because, we don't, I was actually read a little bit of a book. I didn't finish it, but it was diving deep into like, isn't the only logical conclusion racism with savage and civilized peoples? And the amount of like logical theories that go behind like why some certain civilizations developed instead of others, there are hundreds. There are hundreds. And you know, even if some people are smarter, which I don't believe, but even if that, to a Catholic that doesn't matter. We should all be treated the same. We should all be treated the same. We should all live the same lives. Okay. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect social support, society support. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society support. That depends. Are they mentally ill? What do you mean by able to work? Do they have autism and they're able to work at McDonald's? Um, they shouldn't expect society support, but I think that we should support them. Perhaps not monetarily in many circumstances, but we should support them. When you are troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. That depends what you mean. That depends simply what you mean. What do you mean when you're troubled? Are you troubled with trauma? Busy with cheerful things. I don't like the busy with more cheerful things. That sounds like indulging, drinking, other bad things, perhaps, if you get the drift. Um, I'm going to disagree, but not strongly disagree, because if it's like sinful thoughts, obviously it's better to think about God or more quote unquote cheerful things. But okay, first generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their own country. Obviously, they can. I don't see why they can't be. Um, isn't that kind of objective? Like, obviously, it just depends. Um, it is subject. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, strongly agree. Wait, can never be fully integrated within their new country. Strongly disagree. First generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their new country. I strongly disagree. I hope I haven't done anything stupid where I've like accidentally clicked the polar opposite. Okay, what's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for us. Strongly I'd say disagree. I mean, if what's good for the corporation is to dump oil into our rivers, I mean, that's probably not going to happen. But if that's what's benefiting them, that's not obviously not going to benefit us. So I'd actually say strongly disagree. No broadcasting institution, however dependent in its content, should receive public funding. I'm really indifferent. I mean, there's a difference between like a little bit of public funding. Um, I'd say disagree. I mean, obviously, there's definitely a middle ground because you also need funding to have news stations after a while. Um, well, you don't. It doesn't require, but it really helps out. Next page, like grants and stuff is what I'm going on. How you see the wider of society. Our civil liberties are being excessively curved in the name of counterterrorism. Our civil liberties. I'm gonna disagree. I think that we need to be more uptight. I think that that's the way to go. A significant advantage of a one party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system. I would agree. I mean, I don't really have a strong opinion on this. Like disagree, agree, it's kind of the same, really. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. Disagree. Because first of all, what the government says is wrong doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong in God's eyes. And second of all, this is going to allow for a lot of the things, as we're already seeing. We're seeing people using it to spy on other people. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. Um, this one I struggle on because I know that some popes have spoken out against the death penalty. some. Let me look it up because I'm. So I just looked it up, and once again, this I believe this is a more so post Vatican II belief, but the death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. Strongly disagree. There probably was a time in history where that was the only really humane option. But even if they were to bring that back, I think that it should be required that they need to see a priest before they are executed. And or send them off to a work camp. I don't know. Just don't do death penalty. I've always had like a gut urge, you know. In a civilized society, one must have people above to be obeyed and below to be commanded. What do you mean by civilized, bro? Like that? Not gonna lie, that's kind of sus. Um, Disagree. You don't have to, and civilized is also subjective. Um, yeah, that's. I mean, in ours it is, but abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. Well, first of all, that's an entirely subjective thing. Abstract is abstract. You're missing the point. I mean, it might seem subjectively stupid, but I mean, everything means something. Everything means something. Really, everything. Even things that we don't think mean something. I disagree. I think it is art, but obviously it's kind of ridiculous how where it's gotten. But it definitely represents the modernistic, simplistic approach that's been brought on by the uh, industrial revolution that we're starting to see. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. Strongly disagree. Rehabilitation is a very basic Catholic Christian dogma. We need to rehab is the best thing. We need to rehab people. We need to rehab people from sin. We need to rehab people from drugs. We need to rehab people from sexual sins. We can do all these things. If you really think about it, going to mass is rehabilitation. Going to confession is rehabilitation. It is a waste of time to rehabilitate these criminals. Probably is, but we won't know until after we're done. So saying that is not a good thing. But yes, it's true. But you shouldn't say, "Oh, because you did this, you're unrehabilitatable." So I'm just gonna put disagree. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. Disagree. Not strongly though. They all have an important place in society. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Once again, I feel like the correct answer is right here. I think that for most of human history, not necessarily their first duty, but the best duty, just because of safety, is homemakers. Now, don't take offense to this, but I'm gonna say agree simply because by saying disagree, you're bringing in a lot of other ideas that are not very appropriate to the Catholic. But I believe that the middle ground is here, that the right ground is here. Um, of course, but I also believe that the father's first duty is to be the homemaker, though, as well, right? So I'm not being a double standard there. Almost all politicians promise economic growth, but we should heed the warnings of climate science that growth is detrimental to our efforts to curb global warming. Okay, so all politicians promise, but we should heed the warnings of climate science that growth is detrimental to our efforts to curb. Yes, I agree. Um, Wait, what does it mean? Wait, almost all, but we should heed the warnings. Yeah, I mean, if we really just from a simply historical perspective, economic growth equals worst um, planet. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. Depends what the establishment is. Is it obeying God? Is it defying God? Um, Disagree. It can be agree though. Just depends. Astrology accurately explains many things. Strongly disagree. Astrology is the Catholic Church is opposed to astrology. I believe it might even say it's demonic. Astrology explains accurately this trace many things. You cannot be moral without being religious. You can be moral, but your moral is simply subjective. Because if you're not religious, your quote unquote morals is what is they? They are simply subjective beliefs. So you cannot be You cannot be objectively moral without being religious, but you can be subjectively moral. So I'm just gonna say agree because I know where this question is coming from. But technically, no. Yes and no. Okay, charity is better than social security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. Absolutely. Absolutely. Charity is amazing. I mean, obviously, a lot of companies are corrupt that do charity, but some people are naturally unlucky. Strongly disagree. I do not believe in quote unquote luck. I mean, obviously, if you growing up in a third world country is different than a first world country, but everything happens for a reason, right? It is important that my child's school instills religious values. That depends what you mean by instills religious values. Does it mean that it's forcing their kids to be religious? Does it mean that they are not persecuting you for being your religion? I mean, I go to a secular education and I talk about faith all the time. Um, I'm just going to say disagree because I know this is coming from a religious and school perspective, because with that perspective, that would be potentially adding, Islam to school. And of course, to the Catholic, that would be a big, big no. Next page. Uh oh. We are. Sex outside marriage is usually immoral. It is always immoral. Period. End of story. There's no exception. A same sex couple in a stable loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. Strongly disagree. I mean, they are living in sin. I don't think that it's a good influence on the child. Um, Porn is depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. Strongly disagree. Porn kills. Porn is one of the evilest things in mankind. The biggest producer of porn is Los Angeles in the world. That's the city that produces the most. It's really disgusting where we've gotten. As an American, I'm disgusted by it. Um, it's very disgusting. What goes on in a public private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. Uh, I can see this going both ways because this is coming from a more assuming that the state isn't like that religiously integrated. Um, I'm gonna say disagree, but not strongly disagree. There's definitely a middle ground because corruption is potential. No one can feel naturally homosexual. Um, I actually don't know. I need to research what the church teaches on this. Um, how about we just look it up? What does Catholic Church say about naturally homosexual? What does this say? The Catholic Church teaches that as a person does not choose to be either homosexual or heterosexual, subjectively attraction for a person or one's own sex is not inherently sinful. So they're saying that it does not that a person does not choose um, what they are. So um, no one can feel naturally homosexual. Of course, I would disagree with that statement. No one can feel naturally homosexual. I disagree. Should I put strongly disagree? I'm gonna put disagree because I feel like a lot of people have they just they just focus on it too much and they're really not homosexual because of our society that glorifies it, or people try to do it for attention. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. Strongly, 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 strongly agree. The hypersexuality of our society is absolutely disgusting. Hollywood is disgusting. What women wear, especially what men wear too, is disgusting, but especially women. The openness about sex, the openness about hypersexuality, um, it's really just disgusting. Okay, let's see where we are. Yes, I do understand how it basically works. Economic scale, social scale. Saudi Arabia, North Korea, China, Singapore, Switzerland. Really? I am, apparently, I am a, wait. Okay, so apparently I am a, like, mid-left authoritarian. Wow. So apparently I'm economically about right in the middle of the left. Um, Socially, I am authoritarian, right? Wait, maybe I don't understand this as well as I thought I did. So, wait, that's libertarian left? What? I'm not a libertarian. I'm opposed to libertarianism. I wonder if I actually did a question wrong. That actually really surprised me. I mean, I'm not far into libertarianism. Um, huh. That's interesting. Hmm. I wasn't, to be honest, like, I feel like I was really expecting me to be more on the left economic scale. But the social scale, I guess because the social scale also includes, like, death penalty and stuff like that. But I am opposed to libertarian by its definition. Um, like, if we look up libertarian definition, it is a political philosophy that holds freedom, personal sovereignty, and liberty as primary values. I really struggle with this because I feel like, at least in America, in the name of libertarianism, in the name of liberty, people are validating sin. They are validating not enough government regulation on many things. I would say I'm opposed to libertarianism. I wonder if I accidentally answered a few of these, not the way that I wanted to. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, like and subscribe. Tell me what you think. Um, I hope I answered this from a Christian Catholic perspective, and I plan on doing a Christian denomination quiz. I'm just kind of curious what it does. See if it guesses me right. So anyway, uh, God bless you all. Bye.